Okay, so today I'm going to discuss a very serious condition. Even if you had a family member with schizophrenia, the chances that you get schizophrenia are very, very low. Not to say that they are not common, but we are studying that family member that got schizophrenia at first, the one who started the chain reaction. So there is no environmental correlation that can trigger schizophrenia in your brain. There are behaviors that might seem schizophrenic, such as cluster A, which are paranoid, schizoid, and schizotypical. Some people, they don't get pure schizophrenia. Uh, they get behaviors that might mimic schizophrenia, like schizoid and schizotypical. They also possess some type of schizophrenia, and that's called delusion, because schizophrenia distorts your reality, your how you see yourself with other people. So delusion of grandeur, which is very common in sociopaths, histrionic, narcissists, is so common in cluster B disorders, which are personality disorders. In later age, when they get older, they tend to possess behaviors of schizophrenia, and it is not schizoid or schizotypical. They really can get a schizophrenia diagnosis. So schizophrenia is part of the psychotic disorders. They alter your reality. Someone who was diagnosed with a personality disorder, they eventually get schizophrenia, which can be genetic, or their reality is so beyond distorted that they create some other reality. So, and then you add the use of drugs. So as far with drugs, teenagers who smoke weed, they are 90%. They project paranoia, which if you smoke weed, you know that you project paranoia. Your sense of reality gets distorted. You hear things that nobody said. You hear noises that are not there. And when you repeatedly smoke weed, all those sensations, all those paranoid thoughts, they become pathological. They become part of you. Your brain is used to it. It's like the addiction is already living in your brain. It's something that you cannot get it out. So these people are either doing drugs or they quit drugs too late. So drugs, like weed, experimental, they call it medical, right? But 80% of people who smoke weed, they don't have any medical condition at all. They just do it for recreational purposes. So they have a lot of mental issues. So they need something to block their insecurity, their issues. So they use weed as a numb mechanism. They are not aware that weed can be more dangerous than cigarettes, than tobacco, because if you quit tobacco, if you quit smoking cigarettes, you can stop the damage in your lungs. But if you smoke weed for 40 years, you cannot regenerate your brain. Even if you sleep, even if you drink water, you cannot regenerate the cells that they are really pathologically paranoid. They are usually schizoid or schizotypical, but not entirely schizophrenic. As I said, people with schizophrenia, they are in the shadow. They are in another world. There is probably a 75% chance that is due to drugs, and then the other 25 genetic. But the results are too obvious to ignore that it was drugs. If you do drugs constantly, you do hard drugs, and then you want to quit, you're gonna have detrimental residues in your brain that will never be changed. If you smoke cigarettes, you obviously are going to get any pulmonary disease like asthma, right? But also cancer, which is a very severe illness, very, very severe. But if you quit smoking in time, as I mentioned, you have a chance to perhaps regenerate your lungs, your cells in your lungs, but you cannot regenerate your neurons. If you damage your neurons, there is a very thin chance that you're going to be the same person that you were before you smoked weed. So the studies that came after Carl Jung, I think they added schizoid disorder and schizotypical disorder due to all these recreational habits that people possess now, like doing drugs and smoking weed, trying mushrooms, psychedelics. So a person who smokes weed usually is going to get a paranoid disorder, schizoid, or schizotypical, which mimic schizophrenia and paranoia. So schizophrenia is very detrimental in how your neurological process functions, how your neuropsychological processes function. Your habits, you have bad habits like doing drugs, they're going to affect your neurological process, and then they will be projected onto the psychological, which is the external. It means you will project something that is not there. You will project behaviors that are not there. They probably think that their partner, who is sober, who doesn't do drugs, is probably planning something, plotting something. So you add that paranoia or schizoid disorder onto a personality disorder. Maybe that person who smoke weed has a personality disorder, right? Which is very common. 90% of people with personality disorders, they do drugs. When they meet a friend or a stranger who wants to give them drugs, that dopamine and adrenaline is telling them, yeah, you're not gonna lose anything. It's gonna be fun. You're gonna be in an adventure, right? And then they try that, and once they try it, they're done. You have low self-esteem, you're insecure, you have a borderline personality disorder, and then you meet a friend or a stranger who tells you, oh, you're gonna feel better about yourself if you try this. So drugs played on both sides of the spectrum of low self-esteem and high self-esteem. I made a video about this, about low and high self-esteem, that you can watch, and you will understand this section. So schizophrenia is not common, but paranoid disorder, schizoid disorder, and schizotypical are very common and probably linked to the other clusters, which are B and C. What is psychiatry trying to do, separating all these disorders into clusters? They're trying to keep a record, but in reality, all these disorders correlate. Narcissists can be schizoid, and let me give you an example. Jeffrey Dahmer, he used to be a serial killer. I think he killed like 8 people. He was diagnosed with schizoid disorder and with ASPD, which is sociopathy. And sociopathy or psychopathy is the same thing. he was antisocial. So he was diagnosed with a cluster B disorder and with a cluster A disorder. So all these clusters, they are useless because the psychiatric manuals or codes, they want to be very accurate, and sometimes they omit logical points into the diagnosis that can correlate or have an effect in the final diagnosis. Let me give you another example. John Wayne Gacy, the clown killer or the killer clown. You know, he used to be a clown as a side job, and then he used to be very into society. He was diagnosed during his life with psychopathy or sociopathy. He was antisocial. He was diagnosed by a psychiatrist. But he was not diagnosed with any of the other clusters in the axis. So he was only diagnosed with a cluster B because it is stipulated that Jeffrey Dahmer, he used to talk to himself, or he used to hear voices. He used to be paranoid, and these voices used to tell him, oh, kill. So he was a sociopath with schizoid disorder. You know, he lived in another reality. So John Wayne Gacy was the pinnacle of psychopathy. Serial killers are psychopaths. Serial killers are not narcissists. They cannot be narcissists. We can say that narcissism is in a lower level than psychopathy. Psychopathy is the extreme. Psychopaths, they physically abuse other people. If you have a boyfriend or a husband or a wife that beats you, she's not a narcissist. She's a psychopath. Because narcissists, they do manipulate, they lie, they cheat, but they go onto the next extreme of the diagnosis level when they physically abuse others or when they sexually abuse others. Narcissists only mentally abuse others, which is abuse. Mental abuse is abuse. If you indulge yourself with drugs and weed and psychedelics, you will get half of this. You will get schizoid disorder. You will get schizotypical. You will get paranoid disorder. You are halfway into this. So there's probably 65% chance that when you turn 50, your brain is so damaged that you will fully develop the other half of these conditions. These conditions will probably turn into schizophrenia.